Hello there. Yesterday I posted an article to JW Survey about the wonderful piece of journalism that's been done by investigative reporter Trey Bundy, who has done a fantastic piece on Watchtower using the First Amendment to maintain secrecy over the issue of child abuse in the organisation. And basically there's a full article, over 4,500 words. There's a brief video about what Jehovah's Witnesses believe, and there's also a 20-minute audio-only broadcast which includes an interview with Candace Conti and Erwin Zolkin. If you haven't seen it yet, I would urge you to check it out because it's fascinating material, and it's really encouraging to see an investigative journalist like Trey really, picking up on this story and doing it justice. But one thing I didn't mention in my brief article yesterday was a letter that was released to all bodies of elders by Watchtower, and it's dated November 6, 2014. It's actually a 9-page letter, and I have it here with me. And I was sent this letter by an elder who's still in the organisation, and this elder said, this letter needs more exposure because it's a really damaging letter, and indeed some of it was quoted in Trey's report on child abuse. I've highlighted one or two bits. I'm obviously not going to read you the full 9 pages, but I've highlighted a few things that are really worth bringing to your attention. The first thing you'll see I've highlighted on the front is about it's basically setting the tone for why elders need to be mindful of confidentiality. And it says, your task is made more challenging by the fact that we live in a complex society in which people have become increasingly proud, greedy, and litigious. Further, in response to growing social problems, governments at times enact laws that impose additional responsibilities on the ministers of all religions. As Christians, we recognise Jehovah's supreme authority and obey laws of the land that do not conflict with God's law. So there's 3 things there. Number 1, rather than acknowledging that there are paedophiles out there who are happy to exploit Jehovah's Witnesses, rather than that being the problem is that people are overly proud, greedy and litigious. That's the view of Watchtower. And it also blames things on governments in enacting laws, and it says if there's a conflict between Jehovah's supreme authority and the laws of the land, then guess what? We obey Jehovah first. And what they mean by obey Jehovah first, they mean obey our rules first. So that's quite clear. If there's a conflict between what Caesar, what the authorities want to do, and what Jehovah or Watchtower commands elders to do, then it's what Watchtower says that is most important. There's also paragraph 5 there under the heading Confidentiality. This is very interesting. It says, as overseers, you are often entrusted with knowledge of sensitive and confidential information. Elders must be careful never to divulge confidential information to persons who are not authorized to receive it. There is a time to be silent and a time when your words should be few. Proverbs 10:19 warns, when words are many, transgression cannot be avoided, but whoever controls his lips acts discreetly. Unnecessary spiritual and legal problems result when elders unwisely reveal matters that should be kept confidential. You must therefore give special heed to the counsel. Do not reveal what you were told confidentially. When elders disregard this counsel, trust in the elder body is threatened. So Watchtower is really pummeling on elders this idea that they need to keep quiet, keep your mouth shut. If someone tells you something confidential, it stays confidential unless we tell you otherwise. There's another paragraph 10, I'll briefly show you there. It says, when someone seeks confidential information, you should never reveal confidential information to anyone unless theocratic procedure requires it or the branch office has instructed you to do so. So never mind personal responsibility, never mind community responsibility, never mind the responsibility to make sure a criminal doesn't have access to a pedophile doesn't have access to a child. We'll tell you when you're allowed to say something. And it later says in the same paragraph, even, and this is really mind-blowing, even when secular authorities request confidential information, secular authorities, you are not obligated to answer questions before consulting the legal department. Oftentimes, secular authorities request confidential information to which they are not legally entitled. Thus, so because of this oftentimes, thus, you could subject yourself and the organisation to civil liability if you reveal such confidential information. So on the basis of oftentimes secular authorities want something they're not entitled to, we're going to introduce a blanket rule that says you're never allowed to give secular authorities confidential information without first checking with the legal department. So by secular authorities, we're now talking about police, we're talking about social services, we're talking about people whose responsibility it is to make sure ordinary citizens are safe and protected. And Watchtower is saying to elders, you know, these people do not have any power over us. We will decide what information they receive. Really damning few words in this letter, which I think are quoted in Trey's report, if memory serves. In the next paragraph, I've just highlighted a brief sentence. It says there is no need to state that you'll be contacting the legal department. So you don't even need to say to secular authorities that you're going to contact the legal department. You can just say something like, as a minister, I have a duty to keep certain matters confidential and must consult my attorney before answering any questions. So elders aren't even to let the secular authorities know that they're contacting the legal department. There's that much secrecy involved. And I found the paragraph on subpoenas really interesting because as you will see from, I think I've done a video on this, I've definitely done an article on it, Garrett Loesch refused to answer a subpoena to appear in the Jose Lopez case, and as a result of that and other other issues of Watchtower not cooperating with the court, they basically lost the judgment by default, and they had a $13.5 million. They had $13.5 million in damages against them. So this is a very interesting paragraph. It says, a subpoena or subpoena ducis tecum is an official written demand for oral testimony or records. If you receive a subpoena or if you hear that one may be issued seeking oral or written information from someone concerning a congregation matter, call the legal department immediately. If possible, have the subpoena that has been served on hand when you make the call and be prepared to fax a copy of it. And then in bold it says, never turn over records, notes or other documents or reveal any confidential matter sought by subpoena without first receiving legal direction from the legal department. So subpoenas are worthless compared to the power of the legal department. Many documents and records in congregation files may be protected from disclosure based on the minister communicant privilege or the attorney-client privilege. So again, this is completely outrageous. A subpoena is cooperating with a legal hearing and making sure that the law is upheld in a certain matter. And what Watchtower is saying is, yes, you're under obligation to attend court, but when we say obligation, if you can get away without attending court and not be arrested for it, then we'll do everything we can to make sure you don't need to appear in court. And that's precisely what they did with Garrett Loesch. He just flatly refused to attend court and stand up for his organisation, who he claims to represent. Even disavowed having connection with it, as I recall. Paragraph 14, handling reports of other crimes. Because the paragraph before, I should just mention, is talking about abuse of elderly and disabled persons, and then it says handling reports of other crimes. When the elders learn of alleged criminal activity on the part of one of Jehovah's Witnesses or someone associated with the congregation as the accused or the victim, they should immediately call the legal department. In some cases, the elders will form a judicial committee to handle alleged wrongdoing that may also constitute a violation of criminal law, e.g., for example, murder, rape, child abuse, fraud, theft, assault. Generally, the elders should not delay the judicial committee process, but strict confidentiality must be maintained to avoid unnecessary entanglement with secular authorities who may be conducting a criminal investigation of the matter. For example, even the fact that a judicial committee has been formed should not be disclosed to persons not entitled to know. In addition, the legal department should be contacted for legal advice on how to protect confidentiality that is specific to the circumstances of the case. So again, even though the authorities may be involved, we're going to keep our mouths shut. They're not even allowed to know that there is a judicial committee taking place. They're not entitled to that information. This was a disturbing part on suicides. I'm not going to read it for the sake of time, but I'm going to put a link to this letter in the description below, and you read paragraphs 20 and 21 on dealing with suicides or attempted or threatened suicides, and see if you can count how many times it says that people who are considering or threatening suicide should be referred for professional help. It doesn't say it once. All it says at the end is family members who are aware of the suicide threat or attempt should be encouraged to take positive steps to prevent the person from harming himself. And as we all know, positive steps very often refers to some form of spiritual assistance. I think that's it really. Very, very disturbing letter. As I said, I'm going to post it in a link to the PDF in the description. But if you're a Jehovah's Witness watching this, there is a reason why there is a problem with child abuse in the organisation, and it is because Watchtower is obsessed with confidentiality, with being a law unto themselves, with dealing with even things that are criminal matters by part-time janitors who aren't qualified to deal with these things. It's very, very simple. If Watchtower wants to do things reasonably and responsibly, it needs to allow the police to intervene in all accusations of child abuse, and I mean all accusations of child abuse, because the police are the ones who are qualified with all sorts of resources at their disposal to discover whether someone is guilty of this or not. It's not the elders' duty. They have no part in it. Once the police have finished their investigation, by all means, the elders can decide what judicial action needs to be taken. But child abuse is a crime, first and foremost. And unfortunately, Watchtower has this bizarre idea that it's actually first and foremost a sin and then a crime. So that's why we have this problem. That's why reporters like Trey Bundy are starting to take notice of this. And I'm glad, because hopefully with a little bit more exposure, Watchtower will gain the notoriety that it richly deserves. So I hope you found this video interesting. Link is in the description, and thank you for watching.